Love is one of the most pleasurable experiences that we know of. And in fact, giving love and receiving love are both intensely felt. Animal love, which depends upon getting something, human love, which is based on give and take, and divine love. Love is the link between heaven and earth. The psychic being brought forwards. The psychic being allowed to illumine our minds. Love for the divine is the spur. And love for the divine is the goal. The very purpose of life is served. Truly living means to feel love, which is inspired by oneness. My dear brothers and sisters, the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you. The topic today morning is divine love. Now that raises the question whether what it means is love that is divine in character, that is divine as an adjective for love, it is love which has the characteristics of divine love, or does it mean love for the divine? We leave this argument for the end, and maybe it will also get answered by the time we reach the end. But for now, we'll come down to earth instead of this semantic argument. Love is one of the most pleasurable experiences that we know of. And in fact, giving love and receiving love are both intensely felt human needs. And in anything that is so pleasurable, which gives us so much joy, we seek primarily two things, as Sri Aurobindo says. One is intensity, and the other is permanence. And we see it early in childhood. The parent and the child tell each other, "I love you," and then the parents might say, "I love you this much," and the child says, "I love you this much." It stresses its little arms out. Now that is intensity. And then the parent asks, "Will you always love me?" Like that. "Of course, always, hamesha." The child is very sure. So both intensity and permanence. The child is very sure that I'll go on loving this parent forever. The parent is not so sure. That reminds me of a little humorous way in which once Gaur Gopal Das put it. A 5-year-old tells his mother, "I love you." And the mother says, "I love you too." And then pass another 10 years, and this boy comes and tells his mother, now the boy is 15, "Mama, I love you. Tell me how much money do you want?" Another 10 years pass, now the boy is 25. "Mama, I love you. Tell me, have you found a girl? You want to marry her? We'll not stop you. Go and get married to anyone you like." Another 10 years pass. Now the boy is 35. "Mama, I love you." And his mother says, "Why didn't you listen to me? I told you so many times, don't get married to this girl." Another 10 years pass. Now the boy is 45. And he comes and tells his mother, "Mama, I love you." And she says, "No matter how much you flatter me, I'll not sign any document." What we are getting at is that all human love, in spite of whatever intensity it might have at a certain stage, lacks this permanence. And therefore, if we want both intensity and permanence in love, we have to look for something that is permanent, and that is only the divine. And therefore, sometimes, people come to the conclusion that the only object of love worth having is the divine, and therefore, I need not express my love to human beings. The person takes sannyas. All ties severed, nothing to do with any human relationships. Go away to the Himalayas and just love the divine. But then that is not what we have in integral yoga. And that is why we need to go into this a little deeper. And before we get deeper, let's also turn to something, I'll turn briefly to something else, and that is we talked about the love between the parent and the child. This is one of the most intense relationships, and at the same time, the jokes apart, parental love for the child has many of the characteristics of divine love. Now, what is divine love? That is love that of the type that the divine showers on all of us. It is universal, unconditional, and does not expect anything in return. Case of parental love, it's not universal, it's for specifically for the children, but it is by and large unconditional. Although sometimes the parents may seem to impose some conditions, but even if the conditions are not fulfilled, the parents go on loving the child. So in that sense, it is unconditional. And they may expect something in return, but even when the expectations are not fulfilled, they go on loving the child. So it comes pretty close to divine love. But at the same time, every child does not get this type of love from parents. And that's a sad reality, which in fact, instead of going down, seems to be going up, particularly in the West. And whatever happens in the West starts happening here in a certain sections of the society. And what they're finding is that more and more commonly, children are not getting the type of love that they deserve. Not only they deserve, they in fact need for proper normal development. And instead of this love, what they are exposed to very often is disharmony between the parents, which gives the child a sense of insecurity. Worse than that, what they find is domestic violence, to which their mother is subjected and also the child himself. Then sexual abuse of the child by the parent and close relatives. And the result of some of these things is that the child grows up not in the type of with the type of love that it needs, which is required for normal development, but in a sense of fear, anxiety. He doesn't know, when I go back home from school, what will be the scene at home today. So the child feels anxious, insecure. The child is afraid of what will happen to him, what will happen to his mother, and the father may be drunk. So many things he starts imagining. He can't pay attention to things in the school. The teacher says, this boy is not doing well in school. The parents only respond by getting angry and may beat him up for not getting good grades. And the child is suffering from this fear and anxiety, and along with that, a sense of gross insecurity, a sense of abandonment. And the result is this child does not grow up normally. He may end up being a criminal when he grows up. And even if he does not become a criminal, since he has not seen love in his life, he doesn't know what love means, how love is expressed, and therefore, in his personal relationships, a little slender little thread which feels like love is enough for creating that infatuation, which eventually may lead to a disaster, and the child cannot have a good personal relationship even with the partner, and this sort of becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, goes on for generation after generation. Now, this is sadly a phenomenon which is becoming pretty common in the West, and we can see that in certain sections of society we are not really far behind. So, with this, after this little digression, let's return to human love. Now, human love has a wide spectrum. At one end is human love, which borders on animal love, and at the other extreme, it can become divine love, love with all the characteristics of the type of love that the divine showers on us, and a lot in between, which we may call human love. Roughly speaking, animal love depends upon what I get from the other person. Human love is a give and take. Because I love the person, I am ready to give something, and then in return I expect something, so I also get something back. It's give and take. And divine love is based on giving, because the divine only gives us. The divine doesn't take anything from us. Divine is the ultimate giver. Because everything that any one of us has received has come from there. So even when we give something, we are give what we received from the divine. So the divine is the ultimate giver and only gives, nothing. So divine love depends upon giving. Divine love is expressed by giving for the joy of giving itself, and nothing else is expected. So at one end we have animal love, which depends upon getting something, human love which is based on give and take, and divine love which is based just on the joy of giving. And that's why Aurobindo says somewhere in Savitri that we start in mud and end in the sky. This is the course of human evolution, and some part of this evolution can take place in this very life, and that is the very purpose of human life. Now, we do not start with divine love, by and large. We start with some type of human love, and therefore it is not perfect, but then it is perfectible, and taking it towards divine love is one way of putting what the journey of yoga is about, what the spiritual journey is about, what the purpose of life is about. Now, till it has been perfected, what characteristics does it have? It has the characteristics which are rooted primarily in the ego. And what are those characteristics? Attachment. We have an attachment with the object of love, and therefore we are always thinking, how long will it last? And when that person is not available, that object of love is not available, we start missing that person. So there's an intense attachment. Associated with it is also possessiveness. This is my child, this is my partner, and so on and so forth. Exclusivity, especially in marital relationships. That this person is only mine and should love only me. And therefore, from that arises jealousy. And then this love is by and large conditional. Expect something in return. And when these expectations are not fulfilled, it may lead to anger. And added to all this, in appropriate situations, is added sexual impurity. Now, all these things are an admixture in that pure divine love, and which is what we call human love. But same time we have to start somewhere. Therefore, any love is better than no love at all. That is sure. But then we have to understand all this to be able to see how we can move from where we are towards love, which can be called divine love. And while I mentioned all these things which are mixed with love, in human love, which give it that impure character, all this attachment, possessiveness, exclusiveness, and jealousy and anger and sexual impurity. All this also makes it vulnerable to what Aurobindo calls many perversions and sordid degradation. And that also we can see all types of sex-related crimes are in fact an expression of this perversion and sordid degradation of a noble sentiment that we call love, and that is because of this egoistic mixture with love. So basically all these are rooted in the ego, and ego itself is rooted in ignorance. Ignorance not of the type that can be removed by going to a school or a college, but ignorance of the deeper truths of existence. Because at the deepest level, in fact, there's no division between us, there's no separation, we are all one. Because our fundamental reality, the soul, is one, and therefore we are one, and when we are one with somebody, it inspires love and intimacy. And that's how true love, which is based on knowledge rather than ignorance, knowledge of these deeper truths of existence, is love that is divine in character and based on a sense of oneness. It is inspired by oneness. So that is the type of love, but then till we reach that level, we are governed by the ego, which is a principle of separation and division. So we see ourselves and the other individual as two distinct individuals. I love, and this is the loved one, but same time we are two distinct individuals. That merger, that oneness has not really developed fully, although once in a while we may feel that I'm one with this person in intense moments of romantic love, etc. That feeling may come, but all the same, truly speaking, that sense of oneness is lacking till that ego remains, till that sense of separation remains, till that knowledge is not complete or total, till we are rooted in that ignorance, which in turn is the root cause of this sense of separation, which we call ego. So in other words, to move from human love to divine love, we need to move from ignorance to knowledge, from the sense of separation, which is ego, towards a sense of oneness, and that is what will take us from human love to divine love. But at the same time, love is important because we have to make a beginning somewhere, and that's why Aurobindo has asserted in Savitri, love must not cease. It should not cease to exist on earth, because love is the link between heaven and earth. And we may say, well, I can move from ignorance to knowledge and then I'll start loving in the divine manner. Till then I need not love anybody. One can decide that. But then, interestingly, love itself is the route for moving from ignorance to knowledge. So love is not only, that divine love is of course the product, but then what takes us from human love to divine love is love itself. It is one of the most lovable, enjoyable vehicles. It may not be the only vehicle, or it may not be the predominant vehicle, but really speaking, there's no real yoga without some element of love. And Aurobindo has put it very beautifully in the synthesis of yoga, when we compare knowledge and love, that knowledge is the widest power of consciousness, love is the deepest power of consciousness. So you have to choose between width and depth. The two together are the best. And if you add to that karma, which inevitably enters, if you follow the path of knowledge and love, long enough and sincerely enough, karma will in any case come. So that's how we get that fusion. But the fact is that love remains a major vehicle for moving from human love to divine love, moving from ignorance to knowledge. So love itself is important, love is the means, and divine love is the end. So one can say human love is the means and divine love is the end. Now, it's easy to say that, well, I love everybody, but at the same time we do have specific objects of love, and some of the common objects of love are the family, and beyond the family, others with whom we have some type of a relationship, and so on. But then as love deepens, as our consciousness grows, as we move from ignorance towards better knowledge, the circle of love expands. And the result is that objects of love are then always available. This is important because if a person lives to an old age, it is quite natural that many objects of love will disappear from this person's of life. The parents would have gone, sometimes the partner may leave before the person is gone, and in rare cases, they may even lose a child may be lost before the parent is gone. And this happens particularly to people who live to be beyond 90 or 100. This happens to them quite often. Now, what is it that makes these people live this long? Not that they eat well and they sleep well and that they don't smoke and they don't drink. Of course, all these things are important, but the one thing that has been found to common to all of them is not what they eat and what they do, but the fact that they love people around them. That is the single common factor which unites all these people who live to 100 or beyond. And because they can love anybody who happens to be around them, they always have objects of love around them. They can always shower them, express their love on somebody who happens to be around them. जो सामने है उसी को अपना लेते हैं. This is the single common characteristics of such people. So if for no other reason, at least this motivates many of us to keep loving anyone who happens to be around. Sabhi apne hain, we are all one. It's an expression of that fundamental truth when we shower on love on anybody who happens to be in front of us, which means that we can love all. We may not be able to express our love to everybody. We can express our love only by giving what we have to those who need it. So we may not have what the person in front of us needs, but at the same time, so we may not be able to express it, but that does not stop us from loving that person. And if you do that, you find that you end up with some type of an open eye meditation. Whenever you are amongst people, even if you can't express your love to each one of them by giving something, you can at least look at them and see the divine in them and love them for that reason. So that can always be done. That itself becomes an open eye meditation for which you don't have to close your eyes. You don't have to be all alone in a meditation hall or in a corner somewhere, corner of the house, you can just look at people around you and with that eye, and that itself becomes a meditation, this a practice which is meditative in character. Now I'll digress a little, again in a little another direction. You might say that, well, if love for all is what is important for taking us from human love to divine love, then all philanthropy, charity, social work probably falls under that category. Not all. Although this expansion of the circle of love can lead to philanthropy, charity and social work, but all philanthropy, charity and social work is not rooted in this movement from ignorance to knowledge and in moving from human love to divine love. It's not rooted in that. Why that is important to understand is because this idea, as we see it in the modern world, is an ethical or moral ideal. And ethical and moral ideals are essentially a mental construct. And primarily, it is the result of either the mental part of the being, that is the intellect, arguing that there are these major problems in the society and maybe I can do something for one of these problems. The pet problem that I pick up, for which I feel passionate, can be different, but I pick up one of these problems and I do social work in that area. Or if I can't do that, I have money, I say, okay, I give away money in charity to those who are others who are doing some sort of social work. Now, this is a characteristic of the mind. It is not coming from the soul. It is not coming from the deepest level. Because depending on the person who has a strong vital may get highly moved by misery in the world, by problems in the world, and then to that is added support from the intellect, which makes him convert this passion, convert this sentiments, noble sentiments, into some sort of social work or charity. Or he may be primarily an intellectual who is working primarily at the level of the intellect, but then so he realizes that this is not a fair and just society and I should do something about it, and therefore he starts doing something, and when he starts doing something, or even before he does it, some bit of emotion gets added to it, because without that, even the intellect alone will not be able to lead to much of these activities. Emotions in fact are what rules us, because without emotions, even all charity will remain rather small and pedestrian. When something really heroic is done, like say somebody giving away all the savings of his life for one cause, he does it not because at the intellectual level he feels that he'll be able to solve all the problems of the world, or because at the intellectual level he knows that will not happen. He does such a thing, it is because of emotions, not because of the intellect. So anyway, so in all this, basically the emotions and the intellect together lead to this type of activities like social work and philanthropy and so on. But all such work is not rooted in the soul, it's not rooted in our psychic being or our divine essence, and therefore it's not really taking us from ignorance to knowledge. It remains at that mental level as a mental ideal, and this has particularly something which has got rooted in our minds because of what happened in the Western world for about 400 years, starting about the 16th century, when Europe started moving from the age of convention, or you can say the dark ages, towards the European Renaissance. Now, one of the major changes that took place during the European Renaissance was that religion was banished, relegated to one corner, and reason, which ruled the age of reason, and which in turn led to all science and technology, which hypnotized us to believing that reason is the best tool that we have for solving all the problems of the world. It's not just for science and technology, it will wipe out all problems of the world. We started depending upon this tool, that is rationality, for solving these problems, and that is what gave rise to rationalistic humanism. And Aurobindo has called this humanitarianism the finest product of the age of reason. It's very good, but all the same it is rooted primarily in reason, which is a function of the intellect. And what difference does it make? Doesn't make much difference to the world, because the world benefits a lot even if it is done in that fashion. So for the world it is very valuable. but it makes a difference to the person himself. Because it is coming from the ego, come all the egoistic admixtures and expectations. It should really make an impact. So I want to assess the work. I want to evaluate the work. If I find that the problems are not getting solved, I get worried and frustrated. If the people for whom I am working, they are not grateful enough, I feel dejected. They don't even appreciate the work that I am doing. And all these things are associated because we are doing it at the mental level, which is still at the level of the ego. I feel great that I am doing some good work. The more money I am able to give, the more of an ego boost I get. Now all these things are there because we are looking at it primarily from the mental level, and it is an end in itself. We realize at the mental level that's only a small attempt. It will not solve the problems of the world, and yet I feel that let me do something. It is to appease my own conscience. So that is the way we try and look at it. But at the same time, because of being rooted in the ego, it becomes an end in itself. It does not become a means to an end. The same work done because of the expansion of the circle of love becomes a means to an end. This type of social service then becomes a means to moving from human love to divine love. So that is the difference that it makes. Now this type of thing which happened in Europe in the 400 years of the growth of the age of rationality, which led to this type of ideas that this humanism, which in turn expressed itself through all this philanthropy, charity and social work, etc. Aurobindo has called this process the process of, again a very elegant expression in the synthesis of yoga, he's called it secular refrigeration. Secular, is not treating all religions as equal. This is a common misunderstanding. The origin of the word secular during the European Renaissance was to express the idea that we can keep religion out of life. Keeping religion out of life was secularism. So it was this secular refrigeration which precipitated this type of activities. Fine activities, no doubt, but with this limitation. So instead of the joy of giving, they are associated with all the anxiety and frustration and depression associated with egoistic activity, even when done with good intention. So then how does this divine love really begin? How do we move from human love to divine love? Basically, as a result of the psychic being brought forwards. The psychic being allowed to illumine our minds. Because, basically the sense of separation is a mental function, and that is because we are not able to see that oneness. We are not able to see that oneness because of the barrier that separates us from the light within in the soul and its dynamic aspect, the psychic being. So it's because we are not able to see that light, we are not able to feel that light in our mind sufficiently that it happens. We are by and large being guided by only a small pale sort of a light which gets filtered through the screen that separates us from this light, and therefore by and large we are groping with a little light as if we have a little torch in our hand, and we can see the next few feet, and that's how we keep moving. But then as the psychic being illumines the intellect more and more, the emotional part of the being more and more, we find that they start functioning more and more in tune with the psychic being, and then this love acquires a different character which is based on oneness, reduction in the ignorance, reduction in the ego sense, increase in the sense of oneness. So that is how this process goes. So now when this psychic being has sufficiently illumined our mind, then we are not using a torchlight, we are using what Aurobindo has called a searchlight. The searchlight spreads all around and illumines everything for you. So it's much more powerful than a torchlight. So now you are using a searchlight instead of a torchlight, and then you can see that oneness much better. But then the first stage, initial stage, Aurobindo warns us, when you are using only that torchlight work, using the mind which is only partly illumined by the psychic, and it's only gradually in small steps that more and more illumination from the psychic comes. This first stage can be a pretty long stage. But all the same, the movement in this direction will be an enjoyable movement. So the journey is long, but it is enjoyable. So when that torch, instead of becoming a little more powerful torch and a yet more powerful torch, when it becomes a searchlight, that can take a long time, and when it happens, then you suddenly realize that yes, something has happened. You start feeling uneasy with that torch, and that is the time. How do you feel? As Mitu says, chhatpatahat hone lagti hai. You are ready to break all the ties, and then you know you're truly expanded. So all the preparation was going on for a long time, and then comes this later stage when all the admixture is gone. When the admixture is gone, with that go all those things which we were talking about: attachment, possessiveness, exclusivity, jealousy, conditional love, expectations in return, and if these are not fulfilled, anger, sexual impurity, all these disappear. Now, all this is fine, but then when all this has happened, love may have all the divine characteristics. And since you have always an object of love available to you, it has also become permanent. In love, we seek two things: permanence and intensity. So it may not be permanent in the sense that it is not for the same object of love, because the object of love itself is not permanent. But at the same time, since you keep replacing your objects of love, anyone who happens to be in front of you is your object of love. It has acquired a sort of permanence. But what about the intensity? Can this type of love have the same intensity? Sri Aurobindo again assures us that it's a common feeling that psychic love, that is love which is rooted in the psychic being, cannot have the same intensity as the ordinary vital love. But he says that's a mistake. Psychic love can have in fact, not even the same intensity, it can have a greater intensity. The only difference is that instead of a red flame, now there's a white flame of love. And the white flame is in fact hotter than the red flame, as students of chemistry know. So instead of a red flame, now it's a white flame. So the intensity is also possible. And that's what you find, the intensity in the bhaktas, the intensity which you see in Mirabai or in Kabir or Tulsidas, that is the type of intensity which is possible. So both intensity and permanence are possible in divine love and love for the divine. That's what we started with, is divine love. In divine love, is divine just an adjective for love, that is love with its human characteristics, or is it love for the divine? Now we see that in fact there's no difference. Because even when you are loving a human being or an animal or a plant with the characteristics of divine love, you are doing it only, you are able to do it properly only if you see the divine in that person or in that plant or that animal. Or for that matter, in that material object, if you handle it properly and carefully. So you are seeing the divine in all these, and that's why you are able to express this love in this fashion. So you are still loving the divine. The only thing is, you are not seeing the divine only as an abstract entity whom you have to love. You are seeing the divine in everything and in everybody. And of course, the divine is also beyond all this, so that divine also you love and adore because of all the miracle and the play and the wonderful creation that it has created. So you adore the divine, you adore the creation of the divine. Now, in fact, in Vedantic terms, the two are not separate. The two are not separate. The divine and its creation are one because the divine itself became the creation. So the creation is only another form of the same divine. The two are not separate. While we understand all this, but even all of us who ascribe to Vedanta may believe in this oneness, no two entities, divine and the creation is one. By and large, for a very long time, again that long first stage, life is lived in terms of dualism. We tend to see the divine separate from the creation. So that is the human limitation, that we, in spite of believing in non-dualism, we tend to live our life as if as if dualism prevails. We see the creation and the divine is separate. But, and this goes on for a long time. As they say, there's a little story of a person who had done all his tapasya and more or less reached self-realization. He went and knocked at the door of his guru, and the guru said from inside, "Who is it?" So he told his name. "But who is it?" Then he told that, "I'm your disciple." Then he asked him, "Who is it?" And he went on telling in different ways who he was, and the Guru did not open the door till he said, I am you. So till he could see that I am the same as the Guru, we are not separate, we are not two, he didn't open the door. So, for a long time we tend to live in this dual world, in spite of believing in non-dualism. As Aurobindo says, love for the divine is the spur, and love for the divine is the goal. Because the initial impulse for expanding your circle of love comes from the divine, because that is where you find permanence resides, and you want permanence in love. So that is the spur. And at the same time, love for the divine and divine love, which fuse into one, that is the goal. So it is the trigger and also the goal. And one of the simplest ways which we can do it is by expressing our love for the creation, which by and large means expressing it to our fellow beings. And then in integral yoga, it doesn't stop there. We are doing it not only for our own spiritual growth, not so that we can see that fusion, but because we are seeing in it also something which will change the world. We are making one little contribution to the change in the consciousness of the human race. And therefore, the more the number of people who start doing it, the faster will be the further evolution of the consciousness, and the faster will we have that new world, the better world, which is dominated by love rather than the ego. So we are thinking of also that change in the world itself. I'll end with one of the last lines in Savitri. It comes on the very last page, which sums it up all. To feel love and oneness is to live. The very purpose of life is served. Truly living means to feel love, which is inspired by oneness. That fulfills the purpose of our life. That also becomes our contribution to the change in the consciousness of the human race.